Nearly 70 years ago, a couple called George and Marjorie set sail for London, bringing 8 of their 9 children with them from the Caribbean. Within a few years, they had a 10th. That was me. George, Marjorie and their kids mostly did well, as will the 400 million or so others who will cross the border to live and work during my lifetime. But for many, like the 39 migrants who died fighting for air in a refrigerated container, there is no happy ending. Nobody should die that way, and the blame has to be laid at the door of the smugglers who took their money and then left them to perish. But here's a brutal truth. The 39 weren't starving refugees. Like George and Marjorie, they're thought to be economic migrants who most of us would not have expressed much compassion for if they'd lived and been caught. Our immigration system is becoming an organised hypocrisy that rewards the wealthy and the devious, punishes those who wait their turn, and risks the lives of the innocent and the naive. We should stop shedding crocodile tears and urgently devise a new, fair, rational system of immigration that ceases putting people in peril.
Trevor, I agree with much of what you say. It does seem that the system does not work at all. And what we saw last week actually was devastating, whether they were economic migrants or whether they were asylum seekers. These were young people in the main who'd left there, who were paying tens of thousands of pounds to criminal gangs to die in a lorry, in a refrigerated lorry. And I don't know how anyone's heart couldn't break for them, whether they came from wealthy backgrounds or not. They died the most horrible death at the hands of pitiless criminals. Having said that, you're right. We need to have a system that works. And clearly, if 27,000 people were arrested, I think, for illegally entering the UK last year, and 93% of Africans say that African migrants said they experienced danger as they tried to leave their countries in order to seek a better life. It is beholden on this country to have some sort of system that doesn't put people's lives at risk.
We've got a system. There's a European... I mean, what's interesting here is that Europe has gone from being the continent from which you went off and you explored the rest of the world. It is now the destination continent, and people are coming from all over the world, and we understand why. We enjoy a relatively good lifestyle. But we have a system across the whole of Europe, which is the treaty whereby the first country that you arrive in, when you come to, whether it be Greece, whether it be Italy, wherever you land, you then seek asylum in that country. And that will stop people clinging to the bottom of lorries, hiding in lorries, or whatever else it might be. For whatever reason, these people then decide that they want to keep on, so they come through Italy, France.
The point is that's about asylum seeking.
That's completely different. There is currently no route for low-skilled migrants from places like Vietnam to lawfully come to a country like the UK to work. There is no, so it's not like they're jumping the queue. There is no queue. And that's my interpretation of what you're saying, Trevor, that we need a system that does allow people, because we need those jobs. They're doing jobs in our economy. They're not coming to live on benefits. They are working in nail parlours and in agriculture.
Are they all working then illegally?
Well,
when you go and have your nails
we don't have
happen?
data. They're not in the system. And the point is we need a functional system that acknowledges we need this migrant labour. It performs an important role economically. And as long as it's coming, by refusing to provide a legal route, we are being complicit in the risks that we're having to take to get here.
What you're saying is theoretically true, Afua, and that's where I would like it to be. It isn't actually entirely true, and this is why you get this kind of tragedy, that actually there are routes by which low-paid people can come here, but the way that the system works is not organised. It's not transparent, because people can be convinced in Vietnam or sub-Saharan Africa that they will come and they will get all sorts of privileges they couldn't get. The Canadians, which is a system I favour, have very clear routes. You can be brought in on a high-paying, high-skilled visa. You can be brought in to do some low-paid jobs, and there are quotas. And then they are ruthless about enforcing the exclusions. We don't do either of those two things. We're not clear about who's allowed to come, and then we're pretty poor at enforcing the border. And that's why we get into this situation where people think, well, you know, my cousin got in, so I will be able to get in, and they end up in the back of these trucks. And by the way, They found 12 people in a car park in near Antwerp yesterday. Yeah. That's not on the front pages because they were alive. My problem is that what's happening is the policy is being driven by headlines and compassion when we need some rationality.
No, but there's a reason. Sorry, I know Michelle wants to comment, but everything you're saying, there's a reason. It's not that our policymakers just didn't think to make a functional policy. The whole area of policy around immigration has been driven by this race to the bottom on xenophobia and racism. No politician wants to be seen to be doing what we need, which is creating
racist, why does everyone want to come here?
A lawful route. Because they need to work, Nick. Because
they want to come
economic
to a racist
reality.
country, do they?
That's
I don't think that's quite right.
Look at the headlines.
I don't think that's quite right because they could have stopped and worked in Belgium or France. Michelle,
if they hadn't have died,
Michelle's turn.
There wouldn't be the compassion.
Michelle's turn.
Well, I'm not going to indulge this racist, xenophobic narrative because I just don't think that's right. But if you talk about the business side of this, and actually Vietnamese people being smuggled here, they've made smugglers £234 million in a year alone. So it is huge business for these smugglers. So whatever policy you seek to have or not have, what you need to be making sure is that you're plugging the holes. So when you've got that amount of smugglers, they're not going to stop anytime soon. If they're making hundreds of millions of pounds bringing people over, no matter what system you've got in the land, those smugglers are still going to be trying to get their way around it because that is their revenue stream. You're going to have businesses that try and work really hard to attract these people because they can pay them way below what they need to pay them. You're going to have consumers who like to get their nails done, but instead of paying 30 quid over there, they now decide to pay 20 quid over there to the Vietnamese people. So there's a whole, it's not just about the route in, it's about stopping the mismanagement and the breaches of the system.
That's true to an extent, but this is where I do agree with Afua. There needs to be a set of legal routes that are understood and clear. At the moment, we don't have that. And I have to tell you, the biggest surprise for me at the moment is that I agree with a Conservative Home Secretary. Here's what Priti Patel has to say, because she wants to have a much more rational system, and she's beginning to think clearly about it, I think, for the first time.
It is clear that we and all our partners must enhance our response. All areas of government have a role to play, whether it's in strengthening our borders and eliminating the pull factors in this country, or addressing many of the root causes to suppress the demand of illegal migration.
So what I like about that is you've got, number one thing, put more money and help into the countries where people are coming from so there's less demand. And secondly, be clear about what the channels to come are.
But you're failing to address Michelle's central point, which is if there are hundreds of millions of pounds on the table, just putting in new policies, they're not going to fold their tent and go away. You've not addressed Michelle's point.
But they're making that money because there's demand, Nick. They're getting that money because there's demand to come through the illegal route. Right. If there were more proper legal routes, two things would happen. One is there'd be less demand for the smugglers, and secondly, we would have the moral right to enforce exclusion in a way we don't do at the moment.
Can I just let make sure we hear from one of the people who's had this experience? And this is a Vietnamese man who came to the UK who was expressing his feelings about what he heard happened in that lorry in Essex.
Dạ đúng ạ, bị dồn ép vào đấy, không có ấy nữa rồi về đi chị, cũng là không có việc, cũng không có bất cứ đi cũng sợ về rồi cũng chết, nhưng mà nhà em cái lúc đấy là không sợ một cái gì hết chị, không sợ gì hết chị. Bây giờ vậy đánh đôi, bây giờ nhà em bây giờ là về cũng chết, rồi đi cũng chết, nhưng mà em không có một cái cảm giác là.
So you hear from him the level of desperation that he knew he was taking a risk, that his life was in danger, but he felt that he had no choice because there was no other way he could make that journey and make the money he needed to make to survive. And this is exactly what, Trevor, you're saying, I think that I agree with, that people want to come. They don't want to come to commit crime, or they want to work. We need their labour. We benefit from their labour. So let's create a rational system so that people can come and work. Most of these people want to go back to their country. They're not coming here to stay here for generations. They have work to do and then they want to leave. And by the way, we benefit from it and also let them risk their lives.
And by the way, it's one reason why last wave immigrants, South Asians and so on, are the most hostile to immigration, because they did it the fair way. They waited their turn, and they hate the cheating that's going on. Yeah. And our system encourages cheating.
Yeah. We'll have to park that conversation at the border for now because we're moving on.